Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmidty, Swanee and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we?
Very well.
Very well, very well. We're sitting on the edge of our seats wanting to hear more about the incredible tale of Derrance.
Derrance and David, yes.
So the example that I had was a company that, it was called WPP. So it was this huge international company with, hundreds of different advertising agencies that sat underneath it. And I won't remember exactly what it was, but WPP was like wire plastic and paint or something. Like it had it had nothing to do with advertising. It was just this original company. That's what it stood for. So I think there's an events company in the world called
DFHE.
It means drug-fueled
Homosexual
events.
Event.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should start that company. We should register that one. I mean, it is a bit niche in terms of the type of events that we manage, but, if you are after a drug-fueled homosexual event, we are your people.
Mm.
Right,
Wired
so...
Gosh, bag's not being the cleaner.
Now, did we get up to any mischief in the time that we broke?
Negative.
None.
No, had a piece of birthday last week. But
Please tell me, what is it?
It was a lumberjack.
What is a lumberjack cake? Yeah.
Well, it's very delicious, and it's
got a crispy coconut thing on top
with toffee.
The theory behind the lovely lady who made it was that it would be hearty. So for a cold winter in Mansfield, it was very
Which
good.
is true.
And then you drizzle caramel sauce over the top of it.
We had my brother-in-law's birthday.
Oh, that sounds
not this
delicious.
weekend, the weekend before. And I normally will buy small cakes, particular bakery anyway. The one that he liked, they didn't have a small one. So I thought, I'll buy the large one. He can take it home, and he's forever going out to see people and have coffee. Anyway, turns out he was flying to Melbourne like the next day or something. So we had to bring it home. And I've just seen that someone's had a piece of cake. I didn't realise it was still here. I just saw that the remnants of it downstairs. And I thought, maybe that should still be being eaten. But anyway, it's not me. But it's the gift that keeps on giving. That's now
You'll find out
10
tomorrow.
days. Yeah, exactly.
I suppose we should introduce ourselves. I'm Schmidty.
I'm Swanee.
And I'm Clarkey. And together we are
Trial
by Wine. And if you have just joined us, this is the second part of a two-part story. So you might want to go to episode 200. Otherwise, some of this might seem a bit odd. Also, why we've just jumped from random whatever DFHE is and then introduce ourselves. So what are we drinking?
Well, I've gone and treated myself to a top shelf bottle of Schweppes.
Effervescent soda
Calm
water.
down.
I know. Look at me. Premium mixer. I don't know who I am. What about you guys?
We're on a cup of tea because it's freezing. My nose is partially frozen. I think it's super cold.
Maybe you need to get up and walk while you talk. Get one of those.
I'll get on the treadmill.
Yeah.
Be very Richard Simmons.
Yes.
Well, I'm still on the rosé, the champagne.
Bottle of bubbles.
Bottle of bubbles. I went upstairs and gave Tony another glass.
Oh.
And this is the Louis. It was Bouillotte. Anyway, the Cremant de Bourgogne.
It's a very complicated name, is what that is. I would
it's
not. It's
really nice, though. I've got to say,
they could have just dumbed it down a bit. Would have been easier.
It's a very, very nice wine.
Is it freezing cold where you are as well? The boys are very cold. Yes.
100%. And because I'm so professional, I turned the heater off when we're recording. So I'm sitting in my cold office. It's cold all the time. And it's especially cold today. But that's okay.
You're a professional.
Living your best life.
I know. I'm such a professional. Right. So shall I continue our story?
Please do. I'm very intrigued.
Yes. Can you give us a recap?
Yes. I've been thinking about something while I was
okay.
breaking.
Right. So quick recap. David meets Derrance when David's, a young man, very young man, under 16, and Derrance is 43. They have a relationship.
Getting groomed on Rundle Mall.
Yep. They have a relationship, and according to David, they're quite close. According to others, like Gino, maybe not so much. David goes up to Cooper Pedy. While he's at Cooper Pedy, he's ringing up looking for Derrance. Derrance is nowhere to be found. At the same time, Derrance's secretary is concerned because he's not around, so she calls the police. The police show up within half an hour and do a bit of a search of the property, and lo and behold, find Derrance's body in a freezer. So the police are immediately suspicious of David and his story, and he's up in Cooper Pedy saying, "Oh, it couldn't have been me. I wasn't even there."
Are they suspicious of him because of anything Gino said? Lippy G said?
Possibly, because Gino's been chucking him under the bus the minute he had the opportunity to. Also, we talked about the context of homosexual relationships at the time. And I think overall, it's pretty easy to blame the boyfriend, I've got to say, also. And anyway, so that's kind of where we find ourselves. David's been arrested for the murder of Derrance, and this, what I'm talking about is sort of the evidence in the prosecution and kind of how people talked about why they thought that David had done it. So
I was thinking about this during my break.
Yeah.
Really struggle to get a body into a freezer, wouldn't I? Would be quite difficult.
It wouldn't be easy, yeah.
And
David is not a big man. He's a very slight young man, FYI. Not to say he's not strong, but he's quite slight. Derrance, from what I could tell, was a bit bigger.
It felt
Not
rather
fat, but tall.
tidy in the sense that they said that he was in the fetal position and it was all rather compact. It wasn't like he just been heaved ho and dumped in there. He was organised. That kind of interesting.
I would struggle to get a body into my freezer because my freezer is so full of other things. It's ridiculous. Like I could barely get anything in it.
That's interesting. I wonder if they had to chuck anything out. Was there anything else like some mince just dipped on the defrost, on the top of the sink, like mince and some sausages and bacon?
There was a veggie basket on his head and some vegetables on his buttocks.
Vegetables on his ass. I giggled when you said that.
I know you did. But I wonder if they had to take things out.
Yeah, I wonder where it went.
Slot it back in. Right,
Yeah.
it's all packed back in. You wouldn't be able. You can't fit a sausage in my freezer at the moment.
Gluing it shut, you'd have to be pretty organised to have the glue ready to go, right?
And if we're to believe that this all happened the way that the prosecution make out, what we're being led to believe is that for whatever reason, and we're not really sure why, they have a bit of a funny, they have a motive, but it's shit. David kills Derrance, puts him in the freezer, goes off to see his family, and then goes to Cooper Pedy, and somewhere in the middle, as you say, manages to put him in the freezer like instantly and then glue the thing shut and then fuck off.
Yeah.
In this very short window of 3-hour window, really. So it is interesting.
And Schmidty, we haven't found any blood
on David, no.
From the gunshot. No, but from the gunshot, like where the crime actually happened.
Yes. But the crime happened on the bed. Derrance appears to have been shot in the back of the head, I think. So like he was facing into the mattress.
Oh, he was copping at doggy.
Possibly.
And that he's a bottom.
I don't know that that's how that works. I will defer to my learned colleagues on that.
Is he a bottom?
I mean, he would have been at the time.
Yes.
At the time.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
One doesn't like to label.
Or he could have been held down and summarily executed by someone. It could have been.
Yeah, bite this pillow while I blow your brains out.
Now, remember the pillow. The idea of not biting the pillow, but the pillow does matter. So
there must be like brains and stuff somewhere. Where are the brains and stuff?
The mattress had been flipped over.
Oh my God, they're organised.
A lot going on.
A big clean-up, yeah, so that no one had noticed that anything had gone awry. Do we really?
When was David last? Sorry, when was Derrance last seen?
We think that Derrance's last movement was that phone call at the last time anyone really knew where he was at 5:15.
Which phone call was that one, darling? Can you just remind me? Not the one he cried. That was the day before.
Mistrust, not Liz Trust. Someone.
Liz Trust.
Someone.
The one where he cried was the day before, though. Correct?
The day before.
Yeah,
yes.
to be clear. Okay, right.
So David says this happened, and David is basically saying something was going on, right? And he's like, "Get out of Dodge. I want out of this." He's in something.
Something.
And he's frightened of something. And
he wants him to get up to Cooper Pedy.
He wants him to get out of there as quick as possible. Gino Gambardella rang him. Gino says he rang to invite him to
his wife's dinner.
Yeah. After that phone call, though, he said immediately to take my car and go to David. According to David, he's like, "Go, get out." Now, we know Gino Gambardella was part of dodgy shit, right? So I think there is something else.
You're a nice local chiropractor, Schmidty. I think
I know. So, okay, so From an evidentiary
Slash
perspective.
pedo groomer.
Yeah,
Slash.
we've got
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Ghislaine Maxwell Gambardella. We've got David's fingerprints on the gun,
Gambardella.
which he said he's shot in the past, right? And I don't know when, but so he has handled the guns. He's not saying he hasn't. They're also on the freezer, which also he would have touched because he lived in the house on and off for 3 years. The position of the fingerprints is such as to suggest that he moved the freezer, right? But we don't know when, as there's no reliable method to work out the age of a latent fingerprint. So they could have been there for 5 minutes or 5 years, or 3 years, because it's been there 3.5. So the array of the prints suggests that it was whilst moving the freezer. It could be to put Derrance's body in it, or it could be to get something that fell down the back a year ago. The evidence, frankly, is circumstantial. Interstage left a new character. At the trial, Anne Shea, who was a receptionist at the Legal Services Commission...
Panda.
No, spelt differently, EA... was a receptionist at the Legal Services Commission, testified about a new character in the story. She said that at about 8:15 a.m. on Tuesday the 5th of June, when David was definitely in Cooper, a man in his mid-20s of slim build and shoulder-length hair knocked on the window, because they weren't open yet, and she opened the door to him. He asked for Justin O'Halloran. She asked if he was a client of Justin's or was he making an application. He said, no, not yet, but I need help. What type of matter is it? He says, a crime. She says, have you seen a solicitor, or is a solicitor willing to act for you? And he says, only Derrance Stevenson. But when I left him last night, he was in no condition to act for anyone. I have to see Justin because he's the only lawyer in Adelaide who will help me.
Who is this guy?
We don't
Yes.
know.
Stop it.
I don't know who this guy is.
And how reliable is Anne Shea?
Well, she's got no reason to make that up. This kid
Who
comes
is she
in.
again?
She was a receptionist at Legal Services Commission.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, yeah, okay.
So he said to her, I want to make sure everything's treated confidentially. And she said, yeah, of course. And then he left and he was never seen again. Justin O'Halloran didn't seem to know who he was either. For some reason, the Legal Services Commission did not raise this as pertinent to the case for 10 weeks following the murder, and David Sachs feels that they had told the police that had they told the police at the time, the police might have bothered to investigate the possibility of someone else being involved, i.e. the police never looked for anyone else. They made up their minds almost immediately that David Sachs had done this.
It was the homosexual lover.
Mm-hmm. The Crown stuck to the theory that David, knowing Derrance was getting rid of him apparently, killed Derrance in a fit of jealous rage, then put his body in the freezer, lied about when he left the property and where he was at other times, returned to the house and cleaned up, and then weirdly called a cab and pretended to be someone else, possibly Derrance, and dumped items, and then somehow got back to the house to pick up the
I forgot about person.
That's right, and hightail it to Cooper, getting bogged at least once, if not twice, within 9.5 hours. That's what the Crown prosecution is asking us to believe.
Shivers, I forgot about that person. So they're two different people?
Now that person, remember that person who was dressed, he had a sallow complexion and shoulder-length blonde hair?
Oh, shoulder-length blonde hair, right, yeah. Okay, that's what I was, right.
Who shows up, possibly the same person, at the Legal Commission the next day with a shoulder-length hair, and we know it's not David because David's in Cooper
God.
and says, when I saw him last night, he was in no state to help anyone. So the defence tried to introduce the theory that others were at play here.
Weirdly.
Yeah. Derrance had worked with criminals, as their lawyer, of course. I don't really think much was made of Derrance and Gino procuring boys off the street and having sex parties. That didn't seem to be discussed at all.
Maybe people didn't know what they were referring to when they were talking about DFHE.
Homosexual.
Like drug-fueled homosexual events. Maybe it went over their heads. They missed
They just shrugged their shoulders.
They missed that reference. If only it had been spelled out, then they might have had some.
Gee, whatever that is.
I was going to say, it doesn't really roll off the tongue, does it?
No, it doesn't. We have to change it. No, instead of that, they didn't make a fuss about that, or they didn't even talk about it. And I think that's because Derrance was a highly respected lawyer. And so, of course, they didn't want to drag his name as the victim through the mud. So they didn't talk about things that could have been pertinent as to why he got murdered in the way that he got murdered.
Wouldn't it be quite normal that a good defence lawyer hangs around with criminals, as in has a lot of criminal associates?
It's the homosexual events is
The
19
DF.
Yeah, the DFHG.
DFH events.
DFH. I can't even say it. DFHE were things that might have been considered a bit too scandalous at the time and
Yes.
slurring, his good name. And also, there's a possibility that it connected Derrance to people who didn't want questions asked. So anyway, they probably overcomplicated everything, creating this web of intrigue with shadowy figures who may or may not have been at the house. Who did the cars belong to? According to Gino Gambardella, he'd gone to the house at 10:15, but it didn't stop for more than a couple of seconds. No car, no Derrance, this is what he says. So there wasn't a Datsun parked outside the house till after 11 o'clock. Old mate Debbie Marshall managed to track down Gino Gambardella in her documentary. He had fled the country with his 2 children not long after the trial. Jeez, I wonder why. In that,
where did he go?
He went to Italy and then he went to South America, I think, at some point too.
Jeepers.
Yeah.
In that, he said he'd parked up.
Nothing guilty about that.
I know, right? He said he'd parked up and knocked on the door. Admittedly, it was 37 years ago, but she saw that as an admission of some sort of guilt because what had happened is when in his first statement, he said he drove up, no sign of the car, no sign of Derrance. He didn't get out of the car. He just drove off. So he was there for seconds. When he spoke to her 37 years later, he said he parked up and he went and knocked on the door. Old mate Debbie's like, oh, there we go.
Longbow.
Something weird in there.
Longbow Debbie.
Either way, Gino's no friend to David, throwing him under the bus several times and making a point of saying he could have been a threat to Derrance and that Derrance would never lend his car or opal ring to David. Personally, I wouldn't believe a thing Gino Gambardella said, and that is important because he's the one who was alleged to last speak to Derrance at 6 p.m. He also showed up at the house when the cops were there the next day and immediately dropped David in it. Jodi Arias, remember, did something very similar in that case.
Oh, Jodi Arias.
She showed up, remember, at the crime scene. Oh, what's going on, guys? Didn't give. Hey, this is also interesting. Gino didn't give evidence at the trial. Neither the Crown nor the defence called him. However, his previous statements were used. Remember the late working bloke across the road who saw Gino's car from 8:45 to after 11 p.m?
Yeah.
Yep. Bit odd, isn't it? I believe Gino was charged with being an accessory after the fact, but I think it was dropped as there wasn't any evidence, and then he skipped the country. As I said, I can only find bits of the court transcript, but what did get my attention were the remarks of the judge pre-sentencing. This gets me. You ready?
Ready.
Justice Wells, in his summing up to the jury, said, now, ladies and gentlemen.
Just as well, yeah.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, you have heard reference to mysteries and difficulties in this case, and of course, if the case is so much of a mystery and so much of a difficulty that the circumstances resist all your efforts to solve it, then a mystery it must remain. You must, for the determination of your final verdict, look at the united force of all the circumstances put together. If upon a consideration of all those circumstances you have a reasonable doubt, if you think it is reasonably possible that the accused is innocent, if there is a reasonable explanation or theory consistent with innocence that arises from all these circumstances that all mean the same thing, there is reasonable doubt. The accused would then not be guilty. But if the state of proof has been reached when the doubt under discussion, the possibility under discussion, the explanation or theory, as it is sometimes called, under discussion, has been overwhelmed by the strength of the Crown case tending to prove guilt, and has in all circumstances of which you are satisfied been made to appear less than reasonable, then the guilt of the accused would have been proved beyond reasonable doubt. And I'm like, okay, up till now, explaining how that works, fair enough. On why Gino hadn't been called to give evidence, he said, now I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that what part, if any, Gambardella played in this case is to be determined by the evidence in this court, and it is well, I think, that in this particular case I should come out in the open about Gambardella. You may have read reports of proceedings in the magistrate's court, of course, that they were preliminary proceedings. Accordingly, they could never have been other than incomplete and inconclusive, and like anything else that you may have heard or read about this case, outside the evidence presented to you, they have to be put aside. So everything Gino Gambardella has said prior, you just ignore. So as far as the defence is concerned, of course, they are not obliged to call anyone. Their legal position is perfectly clear. The Crown must prove the charge. If they wish to call a witness, then it is open for them to do so, but there's no obligation on them to do anything, so their position is quite clear. And if any of you have been thinking, well, why didn't the defence call him? The shorter answer is they don't have to call anyone, and it's entirely for them to say, and there's no question of drawing any inference adverse to the defence. So as far as the Crown's concerned, well, the Crown has this obligation and duty that when they call a person to enter the witness box, they must be prepared to vouch, in effect, that he's a person prepared to assist. Now, I hasten to add that not by one whit takes away from your duty and responsibility to assess the witness, but what it means in a negative way is this, that the Crown will not put anyone in the box if they have a reason to think he will not act in the box in the interest of the administration of justice, i.e., Gambadella's a fucking lawyer. Yes. So the reason why this witness or that witness is not present is wholly a matter of speculation as far as we're concerned. That is you and me. And so no one is brought back again, blah, 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 right? So what we are here to determine is a verdict according to the evidence called. Okay? I've got that. It's up to the Crown and defence who they call. And if no one called anything, there's nothing to see here. So then he goes on to suggest to the jury that the call that Gambardella was supposed to have made at 6 p.m. to Derrance could have been to David. The judge suggests to the jury.
What? Another theory?
That the call...
I'd like to introduce another theory.
Yeah. He spitballs to the jury, given Gambardella's not there to have given testimony, that maybe the reason David got back later than he's making out is because he was over at Gino's.
What?
It wouldn't require very much of a deviation to taking Gambardella's premises on your way back to 189 Green Hill Road, he said. It goes on to question loads of David's account, always covering himself with, of course, it's entirely for you to say. It was obvious that the deceased Stevenson was shot from the rear. The shot was not, you may say, exactly in the middle of the target, but you may care to conclude that it certainly wasn't shot from outside. And if it was aimed, and I say if it was aimed, can you doubt that some sort of aim was necessary? Who was in a position to get a good aim when a clear opportunity arose? That is something to consider. Then there's the operation of the loading of the rifle. How could that have been affected? You may think, it is for you to say, that it would have been a risky thing for whoever it was to have taken the rifle out of the house to load it, because immediately there would be the rack without a rifle. And unless the opportunity was chosen pretty well, it would be pretty immediately obvious that the rifle was missing. Therefore, was it loaded in the house? There is no positive evidence about this, ladies and gentlemen, but counsel pointed to the live round under the chest of drawers that you've heard about. You have been told by the ballistics expert that the loading of this rifle by a single round was a very fiddly business, as he described it. Is that something that could have been done in the house? If it was done in the house without arousing suspicion.
This is the judge.
This is the judge. Without arousing suspicion. In what circumstances could it be done without arousing suspicions? Bearing in mind, of course, I think Mr. Johnson mentioned this, that the magazine was found in the car. Therefore, is it theoretically possible that the magazine was at some stage in the rifle and conceivably, I suppose, could have been used in some way to assist the loading, but at all events, this is a point for you to consider.
What?
There was the returning of the rifle to the rack. Why was that done? There was the spraying of the deodorant into the rifle. Would that have been done to mask the smell, perhaps, of a recently fired weapon? That is entirely for you, but it is a fair conclusion. Then there is the bed. And you may remember a remark by the accused when he said that
Is this just as well?
This is just as well. That the accused, when he said that he hadn't made the bed on that Monday, and ordinarily it wasn't made unless there were clean sheets put on. And it's for you to say, looking at the bed as it appears in that photograph, whether that answers the description of how the bed would ordinarily look if it were made, apparently roughly, before clean sheets were put on. Then one has, from many quarters, the fact that the light in the evening was on, and what was discovered was the radio was playing, and you were told that it was the deceased Stevenson's practice when he left for the evening to go somewhere to leave the light on and the radio playing. Now, it's entirely for you to say. You may regard those as purely fortuitous facts, having no connection with the case, other than they just happened. But do they, in their cumulative force, it is up to you to say, do they or do they not show a species of familiarity with what one might have expected? Do they not fit in with general picture of something done in such a way as to avoid suspicion from the first people who came in and surveyed the scene? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is entirely for you to say. There were the fingerprints on the freezer. The position of these fingerprints you may find significant, and you may find it consistent with the proposition that they could have been put there by someone moving the freezer out and someone moving the freezer back. You may think it is a possibility.
It's entirely for you to say.
It is for you to say whether it is an actuality or whether it fits in a way to the picture as a whole. We know there was one pillow missing. Now, back to your questions about pillows. I suppose one could ask here, was that pillow in the garbage bag? The one that got thrown at Rundle
in Rundle Mall.
Well, that is for you to say. If there was an outsider, but it was done in the house, why would an outsider worry about waiting around and cleaning up? If, however, it is someone in the household and it is not premeditated, it is unpremeditated, and if the murder took place within the house, what then becomes necessary to do? Well, it is for you to say what sort of approach might be made. But one such approach, you may think, and it's entirely for you to say, is to delay discovery of the crime for long enough for the person to remove himself far enough away to avoid the shadow of suspicion. Not only was the body placed in the freezer, which would naturally have some effect on its condition, and it might be thought to confuse the time of death, and in that connection you will bear in mind what the accused said to the policeman about such an act. Why was it important to delay discovery? As you know, the results of what were done were fairly effective. They deceived Mrs. Flaherty in her first visit. They deceived the detectives for a while until Sergeant McEachin made his determined effort to open the freezer. Why was this all done? In the cab, also a brown attaché case with this young man, whoever he was. This man came from 189, whoever he was, who was there on the 4th of June, who was resident in 189, who would ordinarily wear a suit and a shirt and wear glasses and carry an attaché case, who was there. In other words, was this a clumsy form of impersonation designed to create the impression, perhaps as an act of desperation, that the deceased was still alive? Ladies and gentlemen, it is for you to say, first, whether the coat that he wore was the coat that the deceased was originally wearing that day. It is for you to say what it contained when it was eventually searched. But amongst the things that it did contain, you may find were the asthma tablets and the ring that links up with the car as things in the accused possession. Yada, yada, yada.
My head hurts.
Can you imagine being one of the jurors on this?
What?
I think he's telling me.
What are you trying to tell me?
He's telling me that David Zack did it. Yeah. On and on and on, by the way. I know it feels like it did, but it goes on much more than that. Until
closing arguments by Justice Well.
Justice Well, yeah. Where he basically tells the jury to discount most of the defence's account and their witness testimony. He doesn't, however, explain how no one heard the gunshot. House in suburban Adelaide, where people are seeing the comings and goings, but no one hears a gunshot. Or why only 3 pillows were found on the bed, and David said they usually had 4. Could it be, and it is for you to say, whether a person or persons entered the house when David was not there, ordered Derrance onto his bed, held a pillow to the back of his head and shot him? Certainly, most pathologists who have looked at this have suggested the particular gunshot to Derrance was most likely a professional job. The entire case relies on the idea that Derrance was killed between 5:15 and 8:45 and could not have died later than that. But we know the pathologist was wrong. We know that the pathologist, as I said earlier,
made their own rules.
Well, yeah. Also, that David drove like a bat out of hell, having left after 11 p.m, because apparently he's the guy in the cab, according to the prosecution, at 11 p.m. So he gets dropped off at Rundle Mall, hightails it back to the premises, gets in the car, drives all the way down to Coober Pedy, gets bogged twice, breaks down as well. Who's the guy who showed up the next day at Legal Services who defo knew something? Don't worry, the judge called it hearsay, so we can ignore that. Apart from the fact that the receptionist in question received threatening calls after that and moved away from Adelaide in fear.
Really?
Yes. Unsurprisingly, the judge basically, and in my opinion, instructed the jury to find him guilty. The jury took just 4 hours to do just that. David Zack was sentenced to life imprisonment.
Wow.
So as for David, he spent 14 years in jail, consistently claiming to be innocent and petitioning for appeals to anyone who might help him. After getting out...
Was anyone prepared to help him? Did he have anyone on his side?
Kim Kardashian?
Not then.
I imagine everyone would have gone back into the shadows, did they?
I think he might have had the odd lawyer look at it briefly. Yeah. And the irony of the whole Debbie Marshall thing was that he actually reached out to Debbie Marshall to try to get her to clear his name.
Okay.
Can you call this episode Debbie Does Derrance?
Can I ask, what's...
Probably not.
Probably not.
Debbie is an investigative journalist.
Okay.
And so what happens is that he gets out of jail after 14 years, and he gets out of jail not because of his claiming to be innocent or any appeals that he's lodged, but because there's been some change in the law.
That
So
says you
they
have to
just
have evidence to
they
convict.
just chucked him out. They just threw him. They were like, okay, you can go because of some change in law.
Oh, like Tony Mockbell.
Yeah, probably. And David now has multiple sclerosis, and he was alive in 2019, but I can't find anything else about him since then, when Debbie Marshall did her doco. I believe Morris Blackburn are pursuing an appeal on his behalf, but there's no update. And the lack of interest has been justified by it costing too much, and there's not any evidence or new evidence. However, David argues that the complete balls up of the pathology, which the Crown and jury relied on to be the basis of would be a good basis of an appeal, and I think he's probably right. This appeals process, he's been stymied at every point, and it would take me another hour to go through every time he's put an appeal up and it's got rejected. I think he wrote to the Governor General. It's like, no, there's nothing to see here. There's nothing new. It's almost extraordinary how no one has bothered to try and, look at this. So for my part, though, it's hard to say what actually happened that night because David was there in and out within the window of Derrance's last known contact. He, by his own admission, came and went from the house 3 times. Some witnesses corroborate his account, whereas others don't. Things like the ammo being in the car makes no sense. If you're going to spray the gun with deodorant and hang it back up on the rack, why would you take a magazine and a box of cartridges and put them in the car that you drive to Cooper Pedy? Like, why would you keep anything that's evidence in the car when you drive to Cooper Pedy in your now dead lover's car if you killed him? And the other thing is, I'm not even sure that Derrance was killed with that rifle. Because whilst there was a 303 and a 22 hanging up on the wall, and one of them had tobacco deodorant sprayed into it, listen, I haven't seen any ballistics that say that the bullet extracted from his head, which I assume was there, was the same as fired by that gun. What I think happened is they looked up, they went, 22. Oh, it was a 22 casing. So I can't find anything that proves that it was even shot from that gun. It's one of those, Occam's razor. Most likely it was, but we don't know. David could have done it, I guess, but I don't think he did that cleanup alone in the period of time that he said to have done it, because unless, like, he goes out pretty much at 5:30 and then he comes back and he goes out again and then he's hanging out for nearly an hour with the sister and brother and the brother and the girlfriend, his girlfriend and the dad. And then he comes back and then he leaves about 8:30. So I do think it's difficult to ascertain whether or not David really did do it. And I don't see what his motive was either. And I really don't think it was because Derrance was going to get rid of him, because he said himself that he knew that Derrance was having relationships with other people and didn't seem that bothered. He just didn't like Gino Gambadello. There's something about this which really does feel and smell off this whole case. I'm more inclined to think that Derrance was dealing with some dark shit and he got caught up with it. David was set up to take the fall. And I have a feeling, it's funny because I've done a lot of looking into this, and the scuttlebutt and rumour in South Australia is that very powerful people, went out of their way to hide the truth. And the reality is that there are other players around this, which this one dovetails into another case, which I'll cover next. But the thing is about it that none of those people are actually important or powerful. So it's interesting. Like, it's one minute you think, oh yeah, there's a dark underbelly of powerful people doing these things, and you get your tinfoil hat on in your conspiracy theories, and then you go, actually no, the people who were involved that we think nefarious acts, the drug-fueled homosexual events, etc., they were not necessarily super powerful people. Having said that, I can't remember the name of him at the time, but there was a very senior judge who is alleged to have shown up at Derrance's house on that night and apparently was witnessed by someone with a couple of goons. No evidence of that
What
ever
are goons?
happening. A couple of thugs, couple of tough guys. No evidence of that ever having taken place. I think it was a cab driver who said he dropped him off there and maybe picked them up later. That judge, though, who's now deceased, was also disgraced for a bunch of other shit that went down, not related to sex, drugs, and rock and roll, more fraud or something. But there is an element of Derrance being connected to stuff.
I reckon that that notion of connectivity came up in the Beaumont children case as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think there was certainly a lot of scuttlebutt and rumour about that being the situation. Does seem to crop up from time to time in South Australia.
100%. There's only like 20 people there. Of course, they're all connected.
Mm.
As for Debbie Marshall, I watched the whole thing, and she said by the end of it, oh, David did it. But there's
She
nothing.
did.
Yeah, she's by the end of it. She basically says,
Did she add more insight than Justice Well did?
No, not a lot. She
Yeah,
sort of
right.
says he knows more than he's saying, and he's not being entirely honest with me, and therefore he did it. But I
Yeah.
don't think that makes him a killer. I think that could make him frightened of some people.
Retribution.
Some people have suggested that, yeah, he went to jail and stayed in jail to kind of
Be safe.
But he did consistently appeal, though, so I'm not sure about that. And just trying to think, was there is a lot in the story, and in the interest of not doing a 17-part story, I basically jumped a few bits. The other thing about the Dr. Mannix is there are a whole series of cases that have been overturned because of his bad forensics. And I think, and again, at the risk of suggesting I'm going to say the wrong thing, I don't think he even had a qualification in forensics initially. So he went he went and did some work at like Leeds Hospital or something, and he did a little bit of forensics there, and then he came back to Australia, and it was like he got, if he was an accountant, it's like he got, or he called himself an accountant, the designation of CPA, and he sort of used that to say he was a qualified forensics doctor, but I'm not sure that he actually was in the end. And it's quite difficult because a lot of cases at the time were overturned, and they had like he put people away on his expert witness testimony alone, and people did really long stretches, and he was just making shit up.
Impressive.
Which is what he did in this case. Yeah. So there you go. What are your thoughts?
The one
Many.
there's a lot. The
My
one,
head's spinning a bit.
Justice Well. I mean,
I love Justice Well.
It's extraordinary.
He said a lot, but one thing that I did take away, which I can't let go of, is why was the scene cleaned up as well as it was? That strikes me as particularly odd.
Me too.
I just don't understand why that happened from anyone's point of view. Like, I don't know why David would necessarily have done that. I don't know what anyone's got to gain by cleaning it up so extensively.
I think Justin Well, what are you saying? Justice Well. I think Justice Well's position was that it would just buy him more time before the
I understand what Justice Well is saying, but from my own perspective, I kind of go, gosh, if you killed your lover in your bed, would you do all those things that he's supposed to have done, including flipping the mattress and I'm assuming, putting new bedding on and all that sort of stuff?
It's a big job.
It's a massive job. I can't see why that points to David having done it. I also can't understand why somebody who was a hit person would have done it either.
I feel like I've watched too many movies and I expect that someone's been there to clean up.
Yeah,
Do you know what you see in movies?
Yeah.
The cleaner, someone goes and assassinates someone, and there's somebody who that's their specialism. They go in and they're the cleaning job afterwards. And I know that's ridiculous because that's what my brain goes to now because I've seen it in films.
But
it just feels like such a big job. It can't be. I don't feel like it's like a one-person thing.
Yeah, and I think it almost plays more into the hand of it being a hit than it does a jilted lover kind of scenario.
Getting him in the freezer on your own.
I mean, ridiculous. And not having blood all over the floor in that process,
Honestly, changing bed linen, changing mattresses
100%.
under, with time constraints and all that. It'd be a massive undertaking.
I hate changing bed linen without any of that going on.
Oh, please.
And rotating a mattress, what? That is at least a 5-person job.
Clarky, this is what I stay home to bed.
Yeah. But when you got to rotate the mattress, do you do that by yourself?
No, I get it. I like someone to help me. Yeah, I can't do it on my own.
Yeah, that's a 2-person job.
And when I say I'm not flipping it, I'm moving it around.
Just rotating it.
I'm not doing that one. That's different again. Yeah.
That's a 5-person job. You need Oompa Loompas to do that.
Unless it was a crappy bed, which is totally different, I guess.
I'm pretty sure it's turned over because when the police went in, they didn't see anything amiss. So the bed couldn't have been sodden with blood. You're right. There wasn't a drag mark of blood everywhere. It was clean. And Even when David went in at like 5:30 and he cleaned up the plates for the fruitcake and there was a cigarette ashtray, he cleared that and he put the cups of tea away and then he left again. I think that was the last time he was there. But he didn't see anything amiss from his own account either. And it's so
Oh, very
banal to talk about, and I cleaned up the cigarette butts and I cleaned up what we did and then I left,
I don't know why I do that, but anyway.
And the other thing is, it's possible that Derrance wasn't actually killed at that point.
Yeah.
So
where was he?
Someone could have dragged him out. He could have been in his office being held at gunpoint, being kept silent when David came in, did his errands and left. We don't know.
I just think that honestly, where I thought you were going to go with this story was, I thought we were going to get to a point where in the last so many years, some bikie or some informant or someone's come out and said, oh, this is what it was. And now that you haven't, I'm kind of like,
nothing, I know, right?
I still left hanging because I thought this was going to be one of those things where the people that knew held it close to them until someone was dying or someone else came out. And then someone
has died subsequently.
Deathbed confession.
But he didn't confess anything. All I know is that his son thought he was a shithead, but, that's not exactly helpful. Yep. No, nothing. No deathbed confessions. A lot of people think David did it. I just find it
I just don't know. I just think it's too big a job for one person, given some of the other things as well that were suggesting that it would have been even more difficult to do it with the time restraints and everything else that he did. Like he really cut out some work for himself.
Busy day.
That is a big day.
It's a massive day.
And then to turn up at the cop shop and go, I'm in a homosexual relationship with that man.
No wonder he was saying that nonsense. He was exhausted. He was delirious from such a busy day. I mean, even not having done it, that's a big day.
Very interesting, Schmidty, but I don't know whether I can offer you in terms of a sentence. I don't know. I just feel like I'm hanging.
I think it's
one of those.
Needs
to learn to zip it.
Justice. Well, my goodness, that's
so his mouth.
I don't think we've had that in 200 episodes, have we? That felt new.
But I also
fresh, unusual.
Nice. It's different.
It's nice. It's different.
You talk about leading the jury or leading the witness.
Oh my god!
But that's for you to decide. Like,
how many times did you say that? How many times do you reckon you said it in the part that you read? 15 times? 10 times?
Said it, and it was literally the next line.
The next line.
But
that's for you. But that's for you.
Can you do Control F on your document and type in that's for you to decide and see how many matches come up?
I can give it a go. Yeah.
So
it's crazy, isn't it?
I don't know what you pair are talking about. That sounds very.
That's because you use a Mac.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm not typing anything like that would matter. But wow, I didn't know you could do that. 14. I said 50. I said 50.
Yeah, you did.
14, yeah.
That's a lot.
I'm so prone to exaggeration.
But there was one that's entirely for you to decide too. So I reckon that was number 15.
He embellished.
He got you on a technicality.
I looked up for you because I knew that there were variations. It's entirely for you to say. And it's for you to say, oh, it's terrible. Anyway, so the thing that I also find interesting is that David Zach did the time for this crime, found guilty, went to jail, did 14 years, is released, and continues to try and get his name cleared. If he did it, wouldn't you think he'd just be like, oh, well, I've done my time, I'll just go and
I reckon plenty of people profess their innocence for all eternity.
You might profess your innocence in your people around you, but he keeps trying, he keeps writing to people, he keeps trying. The Debbie Marshall thing was trying to get someone to pay attention and to help him prove that he had not done it. The other problem I have is with his defence team, because his defence team didn't spend their time proving that he was innocent. The judge was absolutely right when he said the defence has left it to the prosecution to prove the guilt. And I know we're innocent until proven guilty, but the defence didn't really come up with anything that felt plausible. Even the fucking judge is like, wow, they want you to believe there was some other shadowy figure there, but, without any evidence that there's other shadowy figure, it is for you entirely to say, etc., etc. I just don't think they did a plausible enough job of, or clearly they didn't, or he wouldn't have been put in jail, found guilty.
Yeah.
Oh, you've sent me down a bit of a rabbit hole, and it is not what you think. Turns out I've got a bit of a thing for Don Dunstan.
Oh, yes, Donnie Dunstan.
What a spunk.
Yeah, he was.
Don Dunstan.
He's really good looking.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
And he wore pink hot pants to
Parliament. Yep.
To Parliament.
Yeah. I mentioned that earlier.
Yes. He's a good sword, isn't he? Jeepers. For a politician.
Derrance wasn't quite as flash as Don Dunstan, but I think they were men of their time. All right. Well, maybe a good sentence is to make them all work for the DFHE, but they don't get any business.
I like that we still have to read it every time because it just does not.
I do. It's
Yeah.
on my
The
eyes.
DFH.
What's that?
They've got to work
acronym
for
again?
DFH events.
Yeah, DFH.
Drug-fueled homophobic events.
Homophobic events.
Homophobic events.
That's it.
Sorry,
No, you're right. That's what
homosexual events.
no, that is what they have to work for. They have to work for
Okay.
drug-fueled homophobic events. That is the punishment for them.
But
I
are they
like it.
gay? Is Justice Well gay?
No, I'm talking more about Derrance and Gino and people who thought it was appropriate to pick up
Yeah.
young boys. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more about them.
Yeah. Justice Well needs a punishment.
Okay, go on.
Don't know, but it's just such inappropriate behaviour.
I felt it was. Yeah.
Is he still knocking around before we go any further?
Yeah, well, that's...
No, I think he's dead. I think
well, that's a good
is
punishment.
dead.
There we go.
How did he die? Let's check that out first.
I obviously did look him up because I wondered if he was dodgy too.
Yeah, it's all a bit odd.
It feels like they're
right?
all connected. They're all a bit dodgy. And was there something?
That's so unusual to me. That this is also like going.
I don't think there was anything about him.
Him connected to the bikies and the killers and the shoulder length blonde hair or whatever. Like that, you could do a... What's his name? The crime writer, John Grisham. I reckon John Grisham could do a story on the connectiveness of the judge and the bikies.
It's one of those things for me with reference to the judge, and I really don't know anything about him at all, of course, where I just can't believe that someone in that position would be so sinister. And yet I think of that example of that woman in Victoria, the blonde, very flamboyant woman who was like the girlfriend of, was he some underworld figure? And she was a lawyer, wasn't she? Do you know who I'm
Nicola
talking about?
Gobbo.
Yeah. Like, you know, there's lots of crazy shit that goes on, right? Who knows?
Yeah.
You know?
But it seems like it's deliberate and planned. Just doesn't seem like that's the sort of thing a judge would say unless there was something going on.
Yeah. I don't understand what's happened there. But it makes me feel very uncomfortable. Let alone having been in the jury for that. You'd be like,
I thought it was odd. I thought it was very odd. Like, I don't sit in enough court cases to know if that was normal practice.
Did that come up in...
She never said a word about it.
I've got a name.
Debbie Marshall.
Deb Marshall.
No, Debbie Marshall didn't say anything about it as far as I was aware. I came across it in transcripts and thought, what? Huh? Hang on.
Wow.
He said what now? And so I just found it a really interesting thing I've not seen before, which is why, as I said, I was keen to get Reggie's view on it, but she's too busy for us.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, yes, and Justice Well is dead in 2004.
Of what, you know?
Old age.
Too many ham sandwiches shoved down his throat for talking too much during a case?
It doesn't say much about him at all, really.
A shady character who... No one really knows how he got to...
No, he wasn't.
Did he have a law degree or did he have a... Similar to the forensics man?
To the forensic. He'd been to Leeds.
It was a kid.
That'll do.
And he came back and said,
I can do that.
I can do that.
He was admitted to the Supreme Court of South Australia in 1950. By 1977, he was entitled to the appellation the Honourable Mr Justice. And by 1988, when he was appointed Officer of the Order of Australia, he had a Queen's Counsel added to his list of distinctions. So he was a very well-respected judge. Yeah. But I just hadn't seen that before, so I thought it was interesting.
Mm.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me on that little journey to Cooper Pedy and back. It felt like we travelled to Cooper Pedy tonight on a two-parter, but I thought it was a good story for our 200th and now 201st. So I hope you enjoyed it.
Well done.
Well done. I really enjoyed that.
Good. And as we say every week, see you
See you at the next DFH event. Oh, no, that's not what we say.
Probably not.
Busy that night.
Exactly. Ciao, ciao.
Yeah, bye.
Ciao.
Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from Pixabay.com.